Dividing with decimals. Dividing by a whole number. To divide by a whole number, what that means is that the divisor is a whole number. Step 1, rewrite the problem in long division form. Step 2, place the decimal point in the quotient directly above the decimal point in the dividend and divide. And step 3, if necessary, write additional zeros to the right of the last digit following the decimal point in the dividend to allow the division to continue. Okay, so here's our first problem. Remember, you could always pause the video to write down your notes in your book. And if you feel like it, you can work out the problem first, and then you'll see the workout example. Okay, so divide 2.94 divided by 12. So we're going to rewrite it in long division form. The second number always goes first. So remember that. The second number always goes first. Doesn't matter which one is larger or smaller. The second number is your divisor. The number inside the box is called the dividend. And the answer that we're going to write above the division box is called the quotient. So the divisor is a 12. Okay, so that's step 1. Now we're going to, step 2 is to place a decimal point in the quotient directly above the decimal point in the dividend. So just write the decimal point straight up, and then we're going to divide. So that decimal in the quotient is between the 2 and the 9, directly above it. Okay, so now we're going to divide. Does 12 go into 2? No. Does 12 go into 29? Right. How many times? Twice. So that 2 has to go directly above the 9. Above the 2, we'll put a 0. And then we'll multiply. And then subtract. So 12 times 2 is 24. Now draw a line and subtract those numbers, and that gives us a 5. Then bring down the next number. 12 into 54. 12 times 5 would be too much, so it's got to be 12 times 4, which is 48. And subtract gives us 6. And then I have to bring down the next number, but there isn't a number. So this is where that step 3 comes into play. We could put a 0 there. And then bring that straight down. And then 12 into 60 goes 5 times. And there's no remainder. So that's our final answer. 0.245. Or 245 thousandths. First number is tenths. Second number is hundredths. And the third number is a thousandths place after the decimal point. So that would be 245 thousandths. Okay, let's do another problem. Okay, so we're dividing 45.72 divided by 15. First thing is rewrite. Which number goes first? The second number. Right, second number goes first. Okay, again, you might want to pause and work it out. Okay, so 15 doesn't go into 4. Oh, I should write our decimal point straight up first before we divide. Okay, 15 doesn't go into 4. It goes into 45 though, 3 times. So the 3 will go directly above the 5. That gives us 15 times 3 would be 45. Okay, subtract, bring down the next number. 7. Does 15 go into 7? No, it does not. So we'll have to put a 0 above the 7. So 15 times 0 is 0. Gives us 7. When we subtract, now we can bring down the next number. So we're dividing into 72. So don't forget to put that 0 above the 7, because when we divide into 72, that answer has to go above the 2 because we're dividing into 72. The number in the quotient has to go directly above whatever number you're dividing into, the last digit of what you're dividing into. So since we're dividing into 72, the answer has to go directly above the 2. So 15 goes into 72. Let's see, 5 would be too much. That's 75, so it's got to be 4. 15 times 4 is 60. Subtract and we get 12. Okay, now we could put in a 0 after the 2 and then bring that 0 down. 15 to 120. Right, 8. 15 times 8 is 120, and there's no remainder. So that's our final answer, 3.048. Okay, let's go to the next problem. Okay, this time we're going to start with dividing by a decimal. To divide by a decimal, that means that the divisor is not a whole number. In the previous two examples, our divisor was a whole number. So step 1, we write the problem in long division form, same as last time. This is what's different. Move the decimal point to the right, counting the places, to make the divisor a whole number. Then, move the decimal point in the dividend the same number of places to the right. Now we can rewrite the problem and divide. Point 0.5072 divided by 0.8. Okay, you might want to pause the video, work on this. Here we go. First thing is, let's write it. Which number goes first? Second number first. A lot of times people will get that backwards and then it's all wrong. You know how math is, right? You can't make one mistake. Okay, so the second number goes first. Now look at the divisor. It's not a whole number. It's a decimal. So we have to move the decimal point 2 places to the right because we want the decimal point to be after the 8. So now, in the dividend, we got to move the decimal point over the same number of places, which is also 2 places. So now the decimal point is not before the 5, it's between the 0 and the 7. Okay, so however many places you have to move it over in the divisor, you got to move it the same number of places to the right in the dividend. Now let's rewrite it. Now we're back to the kind of problems we were just doing in the first 2 examples. Bring the decimal point straight up. 8 doesn't go into 5. 8 goes into 50 6 times. Gives us 48. Subtract, we get 2. Bring down to 7. 8 into 27. 3 times. 24. Subtract, we get 3. Bring down to 2. 8 into 32. 4 times. Oh, there's no remainder. Well, it ended. So there's no need to put a 0 after the 2 and bring down another number. So there's our final answer, 6.34. Okay, so there's no remainders. I kind of said remainder, but here we just keep going until it ends, called a terminating decimal. Otherwise, we have to talk about rounding, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. Okay, let's go on. 30.52 divided by 1.4. Again, you might want to pause and work on this, and then click back on play when you're ready to see the worked out example. Okay, rewrite it. Second number first. Now, how many places do we have to move the decimal point to the right to make it into a whole number? Right, 1 place. So that means we got to move it over one place in the dividend as well. One place to the right, one place to the right. So now it's 14 into 305.2. Now we can start dividing. 14 into 30. Almost forgot to put that decimal point. 14 into 30 goes twice. Bring down the 5. 14 and 25. Just once, 2 would be too much. Subtract to get 11. Bring down the 2. 14 into 112. 8. That's right. And it came out to be 0, so we're all done. 21.8. Okay, moving on. Rounding the quotient to a specified place value. Okay, those first examples that we just did, they ended quite nicely. See, some of these will just go on forever. They're called non-terminating decimals. But the ones we just did were called terminating decimals. They ended. We might have had to bring down a 0 or add some zeros and then bring down a 0, but it ended quite nicely. But not all of them are going to work out that way. So, sometimes the quotient is not a terminating decimal. The division can go on forever or at least have many places after the decimal point. So we will sometimes round off the answers to a specified place value. So we've talked about rounding previously. Here's our basic rules. When rounding, we look at the number to the right of the specified place value, and if it is 5 or more, round up. That means add 1 to the specified place value. If it's 4 or less, round down. That means leave the specified place value alone. Also remember that the last digit written is a specified place value. So if they tell you to round to the tenths, then the tenths is the last number to write. If they tell you to round to the hundredths, then the hundredths is the last place to write. Okay. So this means when rounding the quotient to a specified place value, we need one more place value in the quotient to round. Okay, so that means we're going to need to look at the number to the right of whatever they're telling us to round to. So here's some examples. If you're rounding to the tenths place, you have to go to the hundredths place because we need to know if we're going to round up or round down. If you're rounding to the hundredths place, you must go to the thousandths place. Again, to decide whether to round up or round down, etc. If you're going to round to the thousandths place, then you got to go to the 10,000ths place. So this just goes on. Okay, let's do it. 0.72 divided by 0.7. And we're going to round the answer to the hundredths place. So first rewrite it. Which number goes first? Right, the second number. First number goes inside the box. You might want to work on this. Again, pause, work on it, and then we'll show you the finished problem when you come back. Okay, 0.7, we have to have that to be a whole number, so we've got to move it over one place to the right. That means in the 0.72, we've got to move that decimal point over one place to the right as well. One place, one place. Then let's rewrite it. 7 into 7.2. I did add a couple of zeros. How many zeros do I have to add? Well, think about the directions. It says round to the hundredths place. Which number past the decimal point is the hundredths place? The second place, right? First number is tenths, second number is hundredths, but we got to go one place farther. That means we got to go to the thousandths place. So we need 3 numbers past the decimal point. So since there was only a 2 after the decimal point, I added 2 more zeros so that we could have 3 places. Okay, bring the decimal point straight up. And I wrote a little note there. Write the decimal point straight up, then divide. We need to round to the hundredths place, so we will go to the thousandths place, and that's 3 places past the decimal point. Add zeros to perform division to the thousandths place. Okay, 7 into 7 goes once. 7 minus 7 is 0. Bring down the 2. 7 goes into 2. Doesn't, right? Put a 0 above the 2. 7 times 0 is 0. Gives us 2 when we subtract. Bring down the next number, 20. So 7 into 20 goes twice. Gives us 14. Subtract. Bring down the next number, which is 0. 7 times 8 is 56. Now this could keep going on and on. We could bring down another 0, but there's no need to. This problem will go on forever if we decide to keep going. But the directions say to round to the hundredths place. So once we get to the thousandths, we're done. Now, that 8, is it 5 or more or 4 or less? It's 5 or more, so we're going to round up. That means add 1 to the specified place value. The specified place value is the hundredths. So we're going to add 1 to the hundredths place. So that 2 becomes a 3. And that's the last number to write. Remember, the last number to write is whatever the specified place value is, which in this case is the hundredths place. Alright, let's move on. Try another one. 25 divided by 11. Round the answer to the tens place. The tens place is the first number after the decimal point. So we're going to have to go to the hundredths place because we got to go 1 place farther than the tenths. So that's 2 places past the decimal point. Okay, let's rewrite it. Remember, second number first. And we don't have to move the decimal point over because the divisor is a whole number. So we could bring our decimal point straight up. I added 2 zeros after the decimal point because we have to go to the hundredths place. Remember, it says to round to the tenths place. Tenths place is the first number after the decimal point, but we need to go to the hundredths. So that's 2 places. So therefore, we need 2 zeros to perform the division to the hundredths place. Okay, 11 doesn't go into 2. 11 into 25 is twice. That's 22. Subtract. Bring down the next number, which is 0. 11 into 30, again twice. Subtract to get 8. Bring down the next number is 0. 11 into 80, 7, right? 77, 3. Okay, it's going to keep going, but we're not going to worry about that. We got the number past the tens place. 5 or more, we add 1 to the tens place. 4 or less, we leave it the same. Right, it's 5 or more because it's a 7, so we're going to add 1 to the tens place. So our answer will be 2.3. Alright, let's carry on. Dividing by powers of 10. Powers of 10 are numbers like 10, or 100, or 1,000. When we talk about power, we're talking about exponents. 10 to the first power is 10. 10 to the second power is 100. 10 to the third power is 1,000. 10 to the third means 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. Okay, this is a shortcut. And shortcuts I think are great because in math there's kind of a lot of work sometimes. So It helps us to do problems quite quickly. So this is just a shortcut. We're going to move the decimal point to the left the same number of places as there are zeros in the power of 10. Add zeros to the left if necessary. Okay, so 6.37 divided by 1,000. Okay, now, how many zeros are in the 1,000? 3, right? So all we're going to do is move the decimal point 3 places to the left from the original number, 6.37. That's our dividend. We're just going to move it over 3 places to the left. So we're going to have to add some zeros. So since there are 3 zeros, move the decimal point to the left 3 places. So that gives us 0.00637. Now, if you don't put the 0 in front of the decimal point, if you're entering this answer on a computer, it might mark it wrong. It's traditional that we always have the ones place, which in this case is a 0. Check with your teacher. Your teacher may or may not mark it wrong, but a lot of times you do want to always have a number in the ones place, even if it is 0. So if you write 0.00637, the teacher might be okay with that, but just be careful. It's just not a good habit to have. You always want to have a 0 in the ones place if there is no ones place. Okay, next problem. Now 10 squared means 10 times 10, which is 100. So there are 2 zeros, and it's always going to be the same as the exponent. So 10 to the third would have 3 zeros. 10 to the fourth would have 4 zeros. 10 to the fifth, right, 5 zeros. So we're going to move the decimal point to the left 2 places. So 729.5 divided by 100. Just move the decimal point to the left 2 places from where it is right now. If you move it over 2 places to the left, that will make it between the 7 and the 2. 7.295. That's it, we're all done. See, so go back up to the first one. In A, 6.37, we had to move it over 3 places, but we needed a couple zeros in front of that to do that. Let's do a couple more. 4.2 divided by 10. Since there's 1 0, move the decimal point to the left 1 place. So 0.42. Here's the next one. 10 to the third is 1,000. Again, that's 3 zeros. So we're going to move to the left 3 places. When there's no decimal point written, it's always at the end of the number. So that 34 is like $34, 34.00. So if you move it over 3 places, we're going to have to add a 0 in front of the 3. And then don't forget the 0 in the ones place. So 0.034. Okay. I think that's it for this. Sorry about that. That's it for this lesson. And I'll see you here for the next video. Have a good one.